The lights of the hearing room were blinding white hot,
sterile and unforgiving.
the kind of lights that don't just illuminate, but interrogate. Every flicker of expression, every twitch of discomfort,
Captured in high definition for millions of viewers across America. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett stepped forward.
shoulders squared, her gaze sharp as a blade. She didn't waste a second.
No grandstanding.
No theatrics, just a single, piercing question.
A question so direct it sliced through the usual
Noise of politics like glass breaking. In a silent cathedral.
and in that split second, you could see it Mike Turner's body stiffened.
His jaw tightened. The camera zoomed in, hungry for the shot.
Crockett's words had landed with precision.
And for a heartbeat, the room seemed to hold its breath.
Then snap.
Turner cut her off, instantaneously. His voice clipped, commanding and dismissive. He didn't just answer her, he shut her down. The silence afterward was deafening. You could hear the shuffle of papers, the awkward cough from someone in the back, the faint hum of the air conditioning.
But underneath it all was a single, unshakable thought racing through every viewer's mind. Did that really just happen? On live TV?
The moment was electric, not because it was loud, but because it was surgical.
Crockett had unleashed a question that demanded an answer, and Turner's reaction told its own story.
He wasn't confident. He wasn't composed. He was rattled.
And America saw it.
Across social media, the clip replayed instantly. GIFs, tweets, and half-sarcastic captions erupted within minutes. But sitting there, in the raw immediacy of the live broadcast, the clash felt even bigger. It wasn't just about two politicians trading words. It was about something larger, the fight between dignity and arrogance, truth and deflection.
This wasn't politics as usual.
This was a cinematic confrontation, a gladiator moment in suits and TIs.
And yet, the real story wasn't what happened in that single instant.
No, what came next would leave the entire country in disbelief,
and spark a storm that neither Crockett nor Turner could have imagined.
To the casual viewer,
it might have looked
like just another tense exchange in yet another congressional hearing. After all, Washington has no shortage of sharp words and raised voices. But beneath the surface, this confrontation carried far more weight. It wasn't just about parliamentary procedure or a single policy point. It was about power, who holds it, who abuses it,
and who dares to challenge it on live television.
The setting was charged long before Crockett spoke. The hearing was supposed to be routine, an exercise in oversight,
accountability, and tough questions. The kind that peel away political talking points to expose the truth. But everyone in the room knew the stakes were higher than usual. America was tired. Tired of evasions. Tired of arrogance.
Tired of politicians who brushed aside
accountability as though it were an
inconvenience rather than their duty. Jasmine Crockett didn't walk into that room to play along.
She walked in carrying the frustration of millions who felt their questions had gone
unanswered for far too long.
Her question wasn't craft for sound bites, it was carved
from the lived anger of everyday people
who had grown disillusioned
with the system, and that's why it stuck so deeply. Mike Turner, on the other hand,
represented the establishment guard confident,
dismissive, polished in the art of control. For years, he had worn that confidence like armor. He believed he could handle any line of inquiry,
parry any attack, and command any room.
But Crockett's words were different.
They didn't just challenge him politically. They challenged him personally. When he snapped back, cutting her off instantly,
the exchange crystallized the divide. One voice demanding accountability versus another trying desperately to bury it. And every viewer watching felt the tension pulse like a drumbeat.
This wasn't just a spat between colleagues.
It was the echo of countless kitchen table conversations across
America. People asking why truth seems so elusive, why power seems untouchable,
why dignity is too often trampled by those who claim to serve it.
Crockett had become the vessel for those questions, and Turner, whether he intended to or not, had positioned himself as the wall standing in the way.
The symbolism was undeniable.
On one side, calm persistence. On the other, immediate deflection.
On one side, the hunger for transparency. On the other, the instinct to silence. And as the clip replayed across social media, that symbolism only grew sharper. It wasn't just what was said, it was how it was said, and what it revealed about the power dynamics in Washington. Crockett's question resonated like a rallying cry. Turner's reaction echoed like a warning shot. The hearing room had become a stage, and America was the audience. The stakes had gone beyond policy debates or partisan divides. This was about trust. Who deserved it? Who abused it?
And who had the courage to demand it back?
And yet, what unfolded next would change how millions viewed both Turner and Crockett forever.
Mike Turner wasn't new to the stage.
For years, He had cultivated an image of authority, sharp-suited, quick-tongued, and relentlessly confident.
He carried himself like a man who had mastered the political game, the kind of figure who believed no question could pierce his armor.
In Washington's cutthroat arenas,
Turner thrived not by
answering tough questions but by dominating the room before those questions could land.
He was, by design, the embodiment of certainty.
His tone was clipped, his gestures precise, his body language commanding. Every smirk, every raised brow,
every dismissive wave of the hand seemed rehearsed, like an actor who knew his role and played it to perfection.
Turner had built a career on projecting strength, yet strength without humility often calcifies into something else, arrogance, and that was Turner's shadow.
Critics often pointed out his habit of cutting off opponents mid-sentence, of steamrolling conversations with a voice loud enough to drown out dissent.
To his supporters, it was the mark of a seasoned leader unwilling to waste time. To his detractors, it was the mask of a man terrified of losing control. Turner's interruptions weren't random, they were calculated, a signal that in his arena, no one else would dictate the pace.
But here's the contradiction. The very quality that made
Turner appear strong on the surface
was the same quality that
betrayed his weakness underneath.
True strength doesn't need to silence others. True strength welcomes the question,
wrestles with it, and emerges with dignity intact. Turner, by contrast, relied on the performance of strength. He was always in command until he wasn't. That's why Crockett's question cut so deeply. It was the kind of question that could not be brushed aside with charm or
derailed with volume.
It demanded confrontation with uncomfortable truths, and Turner, faced with that reality,
defaulted to his oldest instinct, interruption. Shut it down.
Don't let it breathe. Don't let it grow. But the cameras were rolling, and the audience was watching. What Turner may have thought was a display of power came across as the opposite.
His clipped dismissal didn't make him look strong.
It made him look rattled.
His sharp tone didn't suggest control.
It suggested fear. It wasn't the first time either. Over the years, Turner had earned a
reputation for being quick on his feet, but brittle under pressure.
Journalists whispered
about the gap between his public persona and his private frustrations. Colleagues noted his habit of sneering when cornered,
the way his jaw clenched whenever he was forced into a corner.
For a man who claimed mastery, the cracks had always been visible to those looking closely. And this was the irony. Mike Turner didn't fall because of his enemies. He wasn't undone by scandals
whispered in back rooms or rival
factions sharpening their knives.
His real vulnerability was far simpler. It was the truth he worked hardest to avoid,
the voices he tried hardest to silence.
Jasmine Crockett wasn't the first to face his dismissal, but she was the first to weaponize it against him so effectively, not by shouting louder, but by standing firm. In that moment, Turner's entire
persona of dominance collapsed under the weight
of his own tactics. The man who had built a career on cutting others off had finally revealed the insecurity driving it all. For years, critics said Turner's downfall would come not from outside enemies but from the voices he tried hardest to silence. On that day, in that room, their prediction began to come true.
And as the nation watched, they began to ask, if this is how Mike Turner responds to a single, piercing question,
what does it say about the strength he claims to represent?
Before the cameras, before the viral clips,
before she became a symbol of defiance on live television,
Jasmine Crockett was a fighter forged in fire. Her story wasn't born in the marble halls of Washington, but in the quiet,
grinding struggles of everyday life, the kind that demand resilience long before anyone notices your strength. Crockett began as a lawyer, not the kind who sought glamour, but the kind who walked into courtrooms armed only with
her voice and a determination to defend those who couldn't defend themselves.
She took cases others passed over.
She represented people who had no one else to fight for them. To her, the law wasn't a ladder for personal gain. It was a shield, a weapon, a lifeline.
And each battle in court honed her courage like steel against stone. It wasn't easy. Nights stretched long, filled with paperwork no one applauded. Bills piled high. Friends questioned why she carried burdens that seemed impossible to lift. But Crockett's compass never wavered. Justice wasn't optional for her, it was oxygen. And that conviction carved her into a force that couldn't be ignored. Her rise into politics was never about convenience. It was about necessity.
Crockett saw how policies on paper translated into pain in real lives. She watched as communities were spoken about but rarely spoken to. She understood, with raw clarity, that the system was stacked in favor of those already
sitting comfortably at the top. And so she made a choice. If the system was broken,
she wouldn't just critique it from the sidelines. She would walk into its halls and confront it head on.
That decision carried sacrifices, public scrutiny,
Attacks on her character.
long stretches away from home.
Every step forward meant another battle against those who underestimated her.
Not just because she was outspoken, but because she was a
Black woman daring to demand respect in arenas designed to silence voices like hers.
And yet, Crockett never bowed. Instead, she drew strength from her community,
From the stories of those who had no microphone,
no platform, no seat at the table,
she carried their weight on her shoulders.
not as a burden, but as a responsibility.
That's why, when she asked her question on live TV,
It wasn't just her voice echoing in that chamber. It was the voice of countless Americans whose frustrations had been ignored.
her style was different from Turner's, where he interrupted. She listened.
Where he projected control, she radiated authenticity. Where he relied on volume, she relied on precision. That contrast made her instantly relatable.
Viewers saw not a politician putting on a show, but a woman speaking with the same urgency they felt at home. She was real, and that realness broke through the noise of Washington.
Like sunlight piercing storm clouds, what made Crockett uniquely prepared for that confrontation wasn't just her legal
background or her political seat.
It was her life. Years of being underestimated had taught her how to endure.
Years of being dismissed had taught her how to sharpen her words into weapons.
Years of fighting for others had taught her that silence was never an option.
So when she leaned forward that day,
Eyes steady, voice unwavering.
it wasn't a sudden spark of bravery.
It was the culmination of everything she had lived. Every late night,
Every courtroom fight.
every insult absorbed and transformed into fuel.
Her question wasn't improvised. It was destiny speaking through preparation.
That's why the audience connected with her instantly. They didn't just see a politician challenging a colleague.
They saw themselves the mother denied answers, the worker ignored by the boss, the citizen stonewalled by a system designed to exhaust them.
Crockett became more than a representative. She became a mirror, reflecting the dignity and frustration of millions. And that is the essence of why this moment mattered. Turner may have thought he was swatting away an inconvenience, but what he really did was give
Crockett the spotlight she had earned through years of struggle.
In trying to silence her, he amplified her voice. Her journey had always been leading here,
To a stage where truth and arrogance would collide.
and when the cameras rolled, Crockett proved why her journey mattered. The air in the hearing room grew thick,
Almost tangible, as Crockett pressed forward. Her question wasn't a simple query. It was a probe into Turner's armor, a precision strike aimed at exposing the cracks she had studied for months.
Turner, on the other hand, danced around the edges, deflecting with practiced ease.
But tonight, the usual deflection wasn't enough. Every word became a calculated move in a verbal chess match.
Crockett leaned in slightly, her tone calm but unwavering.
Turner responded with clipped sentences, sharp interjections, and a rehearsed calm meant to convey control.
But the cameras captured what the eye could see. Subtle micro-expressions. The tightening of his jaw, the flicker of his eyes betraying uncertainty. A pause, a breath. The audience felt the tension spool tighter. Crockett asked again, this time reframing her question.
Cutting through bureaucratic jargon with simplicity and force.
Turner attempted to interrupt.
But her calm persistence held him at bay, like a tide refusing to retreat.
Across the room, the staffers shifted uncomfortably, sensing the stakes rising. The spectators leaned forward, eyes glued to the exchange. Some whispered to one another. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Cameras alternated between close-ups of Crockett's steady composure and Turner's growing agitation. Every sigh, every small smirk, every raised eyebrow amplified. The drama unfolding before millions of viewers at home. Turner tried the old tactics: authority, volume, and diversion.
Yet Crockett anticipated each move. Each time he dodged, she redirected. Each time he attempted to intimidate, she remained unflinching.
The rhythm of the debate became almost cinematic.
A dance of tension and counter-tension. An escalating narrative of control versus courage.
Observers could sense the power dynamic shifting. Crockett's calm determination contrasted sharply with Turner's visible impatience.
She had turned the room into a theater where words were weapons, and audiences were holding their collective breath.
Even those predisposed to side with Turner couldn't ignore the precision and moral
weight of Crockett's delivery.
Every interruption he threw back at her, every defensive posture,
only underscored the truth she was landing, that arrogance, no matter how polished, falters under steady insistence and moral clarity.
And yet, Turner remained dangerously close to regaining control, making every second of Crockett's questioning a delicate balancing act.
The tension reached its apex. The room went almost silent.
Every camera focused, every eye fixed.
Crockett's final phrasing simple, sharp, and unavoidable cut through the pretense of authority like a scalpel.
She didn't shout.
She didn't flail. She simply asked the one question that demanded the truth,
And the effect was immediate. Then, in one sentence, Crockett flipped the entire room upside down. The audience gasped. Staffers froze mid-motion. Turner's composure faltered.
and the nation watching at home sensed it instantly.
Something monumental had just occurred.
Something that would echo far beyond the walls of that hearing room.
And so, the moment that captivated the nation comes full circle. That one question.
Shut it all down.
What seemed like a fleeting exchange on live television became a defining statement.
A reminder that courage, clarity, and dignity can overpower even the most polished arrogance.
Crockett didn't raise her voice.
She didn't yell or dramatize.
She simply stood firm, let truth guide her words, and held the line against a system built to dismiss her.
That is the power of integrity in action, the kind that resonates far beyond any single hearing room, far beyond any political party or camera lens. For viewers at home, the lesson is clear. Dignity always triumphs over arrogance. Persistence always pierces pretense. And one voice, when grounded in courage and principle, can spark a movement. That's the reason millions replayed the clip,
Shared it across social media.
and debated it with friends, colleagues, and strangers alike.
It wasn't just politics.
It was a call to awaken the courage within each of us.
Now, it's your turn. Subscribe to stay connected to the stories that reveal truth, challenge power, and inspire action.
Share this video to remind others that standing firm matters, that your voice matters. Become part of this movement for truth, for accountability, and for dignity. Because sometimes, it only takes one question to change everything. And when that question lands, the world pays attention.